Hi, my beautiful everyday women of the world. Welcome to the Everyday Woman Summit. This is what having it all looks like. Today, I get to talk to, hang out with, and enjoy the beautiful, rebellious Starlyn Haneman. We've been friends for a couple of years now. We meet regularly, and we've just done such a beautiful job of holding each other throughout this whole big journey. And Star is building her speaking career, and so it's really wonderful to see her evolving through her life as she's also renovating her home and taking care of her family and taking care of herself. So we're going to dive into the interview with her, and we're both wearing earrings from her slightly entrepreneurial daughter, firstborn, who was selling these as a fundraiser last year and
Mm-hmm.
maybe still doing. Less so? No, not so much. Okay, well, yeah, they were super fun. And so when Star showed up in them, I went to put a pair of mine on too. So welcome, Star. You ready to take us into a snapshot of your life?
Let's do it.
Let's do
Ready
it.
to do it.
Okay, I think I already asked you this question because now I know how tall you are, but for the people watching, will you share your height, please?
I am 5'5.5".
5'5" and a half. The halves
Yes.
count. Beautiful.
Yes. I'm gonna own that half as long as I possibly can.
One of the other speakers had their height wrong for so many years, and they're actually an inch taller than they believe they were their entire life. Which is like
What?
such the reversal of what usually happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah, super fun. Okay, Star. So take us into your having it all life, a day or a week in the life of Madame Starlyn. What are you doing? How are you feeling? And what goes on in your day to day?
Ooh, wow, that was like 17 questions all in one. Okay. Um, I don't know that I am having it all necessarily. Maybe having it all, but not all at once,
Hmm. Hmm.
is what it feels like. Uh, and knowing that that balance is not actually a balance, but sometimes it's a give and a take flow rather than what they talk about with balancing, life and work and family.
Yeah.
I that feels like an impossible juggling act. So it feels more like sometimes the scales tip in more in one direction than the other when I
Hmm.
have different energies
Yeah.
and mental capacities,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
so yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of maybe closing in on wrapping up my renovation of the 100-year-old house. And it's still a long ways out, but it's the big stuff's getting done.
Hmm.
And then my business is kind of just evolving to the point of where it's all in my head at this point, which sounds a little crazy, but it's all working through what that looks like and how it's going to look and what it
Hmm.
is I really want to speak about, because what I have been speaking about previously isn't necessarily what I want to speak about
No.
going forward.
Yeah.
And how I was trying to build my business is not the business I actually want.
Yeah.
So being true to myself in that, and that is very hard and very scary because the rest of the world says that it maybe should look this way.
Hmm.
And I have a vision that it will not look that way. But I
Hmm.
don't know what the vision is that it will look like.
Hence the rebel.
So,
You're telling me to do
yes.
it one way, I'm gonna refuse, and I gotta figure
100%.
out a different way.
Yes, I have to figure out a different way, and I just wish I had an idea of what that was, because so often people say you have to like have a vision, like a vision board of like where you're going. And
Mhm.
the problem is I feel like I'm going into the unknown without a picture, and
Yeah.
it's like I'm building it as I go,
Yeah.
and that is difficult and scary, and it feels like it's a lot of building and then maybe tearing down and then building again
Mhm.
and trying to get it how I want it. But I don't want to settle for, I don't know, a house that doesn't feel like my own sort of thing. I
Yeah.
don't want to build something that feels very uncomfortable to live in. So,
Yeah. This is like doing it for you your way, right? And there is definitely a deeper level of freedom when we let go of everything that the world is trying to tell us, because that's taking on other people's rules and ideas instead
mhm.
of leading with our own. And so it's a
Yeah.
big power shift, and it is harder because um, it's nice to be able to follow people who have done it, but there are people who are doing it completely their way that we still can follow or reference and,
Oh,
build our own permission with to do it the
yes.
way that we want to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm using watching people that are maybe doing things differently as a, oh, if they can do it, then I can do it.
Hmm.
Not necessarily like just more like inspiration
Yeah.
as far as being able to do things my way because it seems in the coaching world, which I'm stepping out of,
Hmm.
is that it's uh, everything seems to be done kind of a certain way as far as how you build your business and what that looks like. And it
Yeah.
ain't for me.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I know, like this dream got sold and everybody bought it, but then realized it didn't quite fit. So
Hmm.
it's exciting because that means you're going to be someone who goes first to a bunch of other people who will then look to you as their leader and can follow your path in their own way too. And
Yes.
and you're doing this while working part-time, and now it's summer in the States, so the kids are out of school. You have two daughters that um, are very active in your life as preteen and teen. And your wonderful husband, and then running the house and the renovation. So, there's these very real dynamic pieces going on, but what I really love and admire about you is that you're still taking that time for yourself and that you're still pursuing that and you're doing it pressureless, right? You're doing it really for you and your soul and what that work will become rather than proving or um, almost dangerously ambitious to create something, right? It's a very like softer, nice approach to that. So, in finding out more about who you are with yourself, this is part of your becoming her, right? We're always evolving into a more version of ourselves. And how would you see yourself connecting to that woman who's seeking to lead herself into a new way or her own way of doing things in rebellion to the internet as you're moving through your everyday life?
So how am I connecting to her? Uh, I guess I have no choice. I mean,
Hmm.
when uh you were saying that, I'm doing this in a softer way and not being like overly ambitious and taking the pressure off. Let's be real for a minute. Like there is definitely internal pressure
Mhm.
that I want to make this happen. However, I know that when I am putting on that pressure without any truth behind it, where I'm just like, I have to do this, but I don't align it with how I want to feel, I get angry. I get frustrated. I get impatient with my children.
Mhm.
I am not pleasant to be around.
Mhm.
I become very upset with myself.
Mhm.
So I am learning every day that part of that connection is truly listening to myself as I go through this. And when I start to feel any of that resistance, and there's certain kinds of resistance, right? There's the good sort of resistance where it's
Yeah.
like this is a challenge, versus the type of resistance of where I am feeling very angry and very frustrated, and it's causing a lot of negativity in my body. Two different kinds of resistance. And when I start to feel that negative resistance, I know that I'm doing something out of alignment. So just trying to stay connected to, okay, does this feel good? And it
Mhm.
is very hard in this world of hustle culture and do all the things, be all the things, to step back and allow yourself
Mhm.
to let things flow and to let things come as they need to. So it is uh, more difficult, I think, some days to do that than to be pushing forward because people are like, oh, what's going on with your business or what's going on? And to say, like
Mhm.
it's challenging because I feel then like, am I a failure?
Yeah.
What are people going to think? Like that I'm
Yeah.
lazy and all these things. And I had my coach tell me a couple weeks ago that I'm not lazy. She's like, you're not lazy. Like, do you feel like you're like, because I feel like I'm not doing these things
Mhm.
in my business, so I must be lazy. But meanwhile, I am renovating a 100-year-old house and doing the work myself. My
Mhm.
husband is helping, but he works full time. So I am pulling out, these windows and completely stripping them out, rebuilding them. Like this is
Mhm.
all me. So I'm not lazy. I worked yesterday an entire full day of construction.
Yeah.
So it's just when I think about I'm not getting paid for that,
Mhm.
so it doesn't count. And
Mhm.
that's what my brain wants to tell me. And
Yeah.
if I don't build a business that's making me money, it doesn't count.
Mhm.
And so there's all these things that we have to get past in our minds as far as what counts as work and what, counts as being enough. And so to stay connected to who I want to be, I have to break through that noise in my head
Yeah.
that's criticizing all of the ways that I'm screwing up or not doing enough.
Yeah.
And that is hard.
That so I just want to sit in that for a second because what I'm hearing is that we create ourselves everywhere all the time. Our whole life is that opportunity, and there's resistance of yourself against yourself in everything that you do, in motherhood, in your relationship, in like your marriage or, comparable thing if there is one, in friends, all these places. And what you describe is navigating your internal environment to see higher and see what you really do have and what you really are doing, and not to count on like an external circumstance to validate what's going on, because it will come. Like it's a loop, right? We do the inner work and then the external world changes, but sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. And that doesn't mean that we don't do the work or that it's not working. So I really appreciate that because um, it is a bit of a like question if people say, how's business going? And you're like, I made $0 today, for example, right? As opposed to I made 10 million billion dollars. Like, but instead, I was featured in a summit. I hosted a summit. I'm, partaking in this or this other opportunities happening, or, there's developments in the work. And when we are living our whole life, building a business into it can take a little bit longer because we're not, um, it's like having 10 kids maybe instead of one or two, right? So you have more things that you're dividing your attention around, which means the return on it might take a little bit longer. But if you realize that and then create that safety and lack of judgment, like what you're saying, then you can really settle into a more beautiful place and a more beautiful certainty of how things all add up together.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. So in those moments that you described where everything is rage, as we all get them, rage against the machine. What do you do, Star, to rebalance, to, you know, let yourself express that and then come back to who you really are?
Mm. I'm finding that my rage and anger, this is an interesting thing I've noticed recently, is that I used to have a very strict practice of meditation and journaling every morning. And then every night I would do the same thing. And then it kind of switched to like just meditation in the morning and journaling at night. And it's just always evolving to how I feel and kind of what the seasons are and that sort of stuff. But my meditation practice has recently, not recently, in the past 6 months, fallen off.
Mhm.
And I want to make that mean something about me or that I'm
Mhm.
not doing the work or that I should be prioritizing that because that was a big part of my uh, kind of
Identity. Yeah,
self-love and self-care. And I don't even really like those words,
yeah.
honestly. But taking care of myself was a lot of that meditation uh, because of dealing with anxiety and all these other things. However, because I made that a part of my life and made it a practice, I found myself incorporating that throughout the day, just like being able to take a breath and maybe go for a walk or these sorts of things to where the morning forced, not forced, but like this is a planned sit, that sort of fell away because I was able to just naturally integrate those moments of taking a breath throughout the day where if something came up against me and I felt like, an angry feeling or a frustrated feeling, like feeling it and being like, okay, and then
Mhm.
taking a break before I respond, or like, you know, kids kids really can just push a button real quick. They know exactly where to so knowing when I can be like, hold on, I'm gonna need a minute, and walking out of the room and collecting myself before I respond because
Mhm.
my knee-jerk reaction is to just ah,
Mhm.
and that's not healthy for anyone. So um taking those moments and making that happen, but also walking. I'm a big fan of walking. I
Walking.
walk
Yeah.
outside a lot in
Yeah.
nature, and that is what keeps me going. And
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like I do a lot of walking, like excessive walking. Um, but it's what keeps me grounded and sane. And uh, when I feel like I just need to have a minute sometimes rather than just like sitting on the couch or scrolling my phone, it's like
Mhm.
go outside and walk
Mhm.
without a phone, without
Mhm.
any earbuds, and
Mhm.
just kind of let what's
Yeah.
happening here. Sometimes I'll work through something, sometimes I just let it all go.
Mhm.
But allowing a lot of silence in, I think we are overstimulated
Yeah.
as a world, and we constantly want to be numbing out our thoughts and feelings and whatnot, and that can happen in many different ways, but the very easiest, fastest available to all people, and you don't even get, arrested for it, is getting on your phone and scrolling. You know, my go-to is drinking, but you can't just drink all the time. And so scrolling is an excellent way to just be like, I don't want to feel this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is problematic for building a business and living a life that feels good because you don't know what your truth is.
Well, and you're giving yourself away a little bit when you do that if there's no
Yeah.
intention behind it. So,
Mhm.
um, you know, there's just some beautiful and very easy, relatable things that you've said here about finding your the peace within your soul and being able to really drop out of the noisy mind and settle into like a self-soothing state of being, right? Where the
Mhm.
mind's quieter and the body's more relaxed through movement. And start with like these walks, mini walks, like 5, 10 minutes. Are they this excessive
And
walking? Does that mean like you're walking 10
sometimes I
hours a
walk
day?
sometimes I walk for like 45 minutes and
Yeah,
sometimes they're like 20 minutes and
yeah,
it's like 3 to 5 walks a day probably. And so
yeah,
do I spend a lot of time walking? Yes.
right.
Would some people say that that's I don't know. I don't want to say a waste of time, but it's like, oh, that must be a luxury or something. But if many people would say that they don't have time for that, but then I would challenge,
Hmm.
look at your phone and see how much
Hmm.
time you're spending scrolling,
Yeah,
because I would say that you do have time to do that.
yeah,
And I'm not like, it's not a luxury per se. Like
no,
you've got time to make that happen
yeah,
if you want to have a different, uh, I don't know, a different way of being.
yeah.
But the more I like, there's two things that I think about as we're saying this. One of them is that, and then I just lost both. Thank you, perimenopause. Thank you for erasing my brain as I speak. I appreciate you. One of the things is simplicity. Like
Yeah.
I think that this world that we live in, especially the business world, it's almost like there has to be, let's make it as confusing as possible or as many steps as possible.
Hmm.
And I understand that some people like a lot of steps and a lot of detail and a lot of like, let's do these things. But I think that when people look at, okay, I have to do all these things to like make this happen, if we can break it down to the most simple, most, bite size and available things that we can do for ourselves. Like I could tell you, you could have this like, 5-step morning routine and do these things and you're going to feel better about
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
But if you haven't been doing any of those things, to all of a sudden add 5 things is going to feel like, oh my gosh, I have all these things to do.
Hmm.
So it's like just do the one thing, just go for a 5-minute walk
Yeah.
and you're going to feel so much better. And it's like when people want to overhaul how they're eating,
Hmm.
they all of a sudden are like, I'm going to cut out sugar, I'm going to cut out all food dyes, all processed food, and they take out all this stuff and they you can't sustain that. But it's like, how about if you just add one serving of vegetables in extra than you would eat? And like just making these like most simple
Yeah.
changes. And as you integrate those in, they're just going to become so much ingrained in your life that
Yeah.
it's not even an extra, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day you'll want to make another change and it doesn't feel like a big step. So if we can keep it simple, that's
Yeah.
great. The other thing I was thinking was in this crazy, chaotic hustle culture world, I think it's a true act of rebellion to be able to sit in peace.
Hmm.
And there are so many times that I'm like, wow, I feel like really, and I'm like, but shouldn't I be feeling
Hmm.
or stressed out? And then I
Yeah.
almost feel guilty
Yeah.
about not feeling stressed out or not feeling like I'm doing enough. And
Hmm.
it is a true act of rebellion
Yeah.
against the societal constructs and the patriarchy and the do
Yeah.
to step away and be able to take a minute for yourself or to feel at peace and to realize that that is actually the true state that we should be in, and we should only feel these moments of
Yeah.
whoa on occasion,
That's right.
but most of the time we are inverse of
Different.
that, and that
Yeah.
is not what we were put here for at
At
all.
all. No. Yeah. That's it. And end
So
interview and just play this part on repeat. Because you said earlier the overstimulation, and I try to go for walks without my phone too, because I notice I'll pick it up some just to try it, and I'm like, what am I? So I've been leaving it even in a different room upstairs away, and just like, whoa, check myself and get away from that thing for peacefulness. And this, all these disclaimers I feel like we need to do. Screw it. I'm not going to do any disclaimers. figuring out what works for yourself in order to have a peaceful state of being is really the ticket here. And nobody but you can really figure out what that's going to be. And the simplicity element is super important because, like you said, meditating, and I became so attached to it that we create things as part of our identity and become attached to them rather than just really knowing who we are. So last night, I had to talk to my stepdaughter's friend's parent about some logistics this weekend. And I was observing myself in the conversation and then, like, okay, but who am I? And let's anchor into that and not worry about being funny or being organized or, proving myself in any way. And I'll just take you guys inside a day at work for me. Here comes a story, so we'll roll with it. Um, a gentleman was calling at work, and they called 6 times to try and get a hold of someone. The question was directed to me, and I'm the only staff who does the service. And um, his emotions were heightening throughout his calling, which his 6 calls ended up occurring over the equivalent of 2 working days, even though they were spread over 3. So, say you call Monday morning and you get a call back Tuesday afternoon, like that seems like a reasonable turnaround time. But I have a tendency to fall into a I'm in trouble pattern, right? And so that was coming up. And I do this a lot at work, particularly when people seem like they're getting confrontational. And I'm like, okay, but you know who you are, and you're not in trouble, and you're safe, and it's okay. And whatever they're going to be is on them because you know who you are. And that little reset and that little self regulation empowers me to be ready for whatever's going to come. And I call, and the guy answers. And then we have a very adorable conversation. He's just a very old man who was quite sweet and just desperate with his concern, which was completely non-life threatening. And um, the only thing that came up about the 6 phone calls was I've called and I tried to get a hold of you. And I've been working hard not to apologize for that because I analyzed the number of calls over the time period, which is how I have that bookend of the turnaround, right? And it's like, okay, I'm safe. I didn't screw up. I'm not in the wrong. It's fine. This person is going through something. I'm not taking it on. And this can be an analogy and an example of how much we're responding and attaching to that overstimulation and making it mean something about ourselves.
Yep. Yeah. I like that. I did basically the same thing yesterday. My kid is watching the neighbor's cats, and he had left a note for what days to check on cats and do things. And he had said Wednesday to clean the litter box, and he would be home Wednesday night. Well, she was busy yesterday, so she was going to come over after her friend's house at like 3 o'clock and deal with that. And then, well, he came home early. And so I
Mm,
was like, oh my gosh, I hope that like he doesn't think that she didn't do the job. And I
mm,
started going through all this. And first of all,
mhm.
it's not my job. Like, I'm just the mom.
Yeah,
And it said to do it Wednesday. It didn't say Wednesday morning. It didn't
right.
say, but I had to talk myself down and be like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Mm,
why are you so worried about what he will think
mhm.
about if this job was done satisfactory when he came home early?
Yeah.
How could he comes home early every time. I should expect this. And it doesn't need to be,
Um,
we didn't do the job correctly, but it's that I want to apologize and be like, I'm sorry we didn't make it over Wednesday morning. There was
mhm,
no
mhm,
expectation that would be there Wednesday morning.
mhm,
He came home early. That's not on me. But the reminder
mhm.
that we are constantly, I think, battling the good girl
Yeah,
uh, that has been instilled in us of like, we
yeah,
need to do this correctly. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to rock the boat. We want to make sure that everyone stays happy. To constantly be challenging that good girl programming.
Yeah.
Be like, this is not ours. We don't need to take this on for any reason.
Mhm.
They can have their thoughts. We can do our job correctly,
Mhm.
and we're more than likely amplifying our anxious feelings and how we're feeling. And these guys over here are just
Yeah.
don't even care.
Yeah.
We're making what if scenarios and making it all about how we've done it wrong. And we're going to apologize preemptively to someone for something that they didn't give two shits about.
Yeah. And your case, the guy
Mhm.
keeps asking you guys to watch the cat, keeps asking your daughter to watch the cat. So, not a big deal.
Right.
Second, well, my case, I delivered excellent customer service, which I would have done anyway. I didn't resent or hold judgment or disdain against this person for calling 6 times, which I'll be real was super obnoxious. Like, if you call me multiple times, I'm going to put you at the bottom of the list. It's rude, in my opinion. But if we're making something so trivial as this mean something about us, the greater awareness and the resets to hold space to get quiet and stop the overstimulation are so important. Again, why this summit's designed the way that it is to be spacious where you can come in and hang out. And I'm like dead set rebelling against any FOMO of the recordings of anything, even though it's a lead magnet, even though it's intended to drive business for all of us. I don't want to hijack people's nervous systems. It happens enough in the day to day, and we do it to ourselves enough. So, this is the big message that we're going to pull out because Star and I are both like massaging out the kinks of our soul. Oof, I like that on the regular to live in that state of being that you described that is the actual intention of our time on earth is to be in a happy and peaceful and safe state of
Mhm.
being, and not without work and toil, but not that as our master.
Well, work and toil can be enjoyable.
Mhm.
Work and suffering often become synonymous, and
Yeah,
I don't think that they need to be.
yeah.
Like, I am busting my butt on this house, and sometimes I'm angry about it. Like, I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I just want a house to live in that I just come home and I just live in the house and it's just a house. However, every single time I accomplish something and it looks more beautiful, or I learn a new skill, or the pride and the excitement and the confidence and everything that comes with that is amazing.
Mhm.
So that is like, it's my own personal growth journey of working on this house. But I don't think work needs to mean suffering. And
Mhm.
oftentimes people are like, oh,
Yeah,
I have to go to work. And it is suffering because it's not in alignment with their beliefs, who they are, what they're meant to be doing. So it does feel like suffering. But yeah, there's supposed to be challenges and effort put into life. But I think that those challenges and effort lead to growth, which
yeah,
leads to a more fulfilling life.
yeah.
So it's like we just got to sit on the couch all day and do nothing. Life would not feel fulfilling
Yes,
at all.
yes.
Like, is it okay to sit on the couch sometimes? Yes.
Yeah,
But you won't feel fulfilled if you do that every day. So yeah, challenges for sure. Suffering,
yeah.
not not on board for that.
Not so much. Okay. Amazing conversation. Now, if we move to the next question through all of this, and I think you shared a tiny triumph with me, but it's not my tiny triumph, it's yours, to decide what the tiny triumph is, not for me to decide what your tiny triumph is. So, having it all together, not being about big moments, about being these quiet wins, about being able to return safety and soothing to the soul, and yet also being super excited about something wonderful that's happened. So, Star, is there anything that's gone on in the last week, month, year to date where you're like, oh, I'm doing okay, I'm becoming her?
don't know why that's so hard. Uh, I think I just have to say that my triumph is not beating the crap out of myself for
Mm,
not um, having what I think I'm supposed to have as far as creating a business because it is all the unknown. But the fact that I am sticking with the knowing and the trust and the vision that it will be exactly what I want it to be
mm,
when we get there,
mhm.
but being able to sit in this extremely uncomfortable place
Mm,
and trusting that I will get there and not being mean to me
yeah,
about not doing enough or, you know, having 17 funnels and bringing people into all these things and like really trusting myself. The triumph, I think, is just
yeah,
trusting myself and what I really don't want and knowing that that doesn't have to look like what everyone else's life
yeah,
looks like
yeah.
because that is hard and that's my triumph.
It is. And you guys from behind the scenes, I can attest to how much Starlyn's embodying that on the daily. And it doesn't mean it's like zen blissed out, but it's that work, it's that efforting and the grunting and the sweating. And when you were describing that bit, I was picturing labor. Now, I had a C-section, so I didn't get to go through that um, uh, carnal experience, which I'm a bit sad about because I think it affects your spirit when you literally push a human through your delicate parts, like a very primal awakening. But it's that kind of force energy. That's how life happens. And then it's the most beautiful, amazing thing. And so that's, what you're talking about, building your house. And then when it's done, and people who renovate are never done. So let it be done. Like, let it though, but let it. How far you've come to the finishing touches. Like, you're not being judged. You're not entering a competition. It's not a reality show. I'm speaking not to you, to everybody in general about what we're doing. Be happy with what has been completed to you know, whatever level, 90%. Like that would be an excellent grade in school. Take it for what it is and let go of a little bit of the rest, so that you don't break yourself and that the work doesn't become the suffering. Yeah, yeah. So through all of this, if it's not going to be meditation for you, if it's maybe spiritual belief or what. But the kind of summary question here is what is holding it all together for you? So is there a mindset or a value, a belief that you anchor in on to tie family, work, ambition, and inner peace together?
I think I don't know if there's like a practice or anything that's tying it all together. It's just knowing
Mhm.
that um, if I trust myself, everything is going to work out exactly how it's supposed to, and that it will work out in my highest good.
Mhm.
And so allowing the discomfort and not trying to escape that
Yeah,
and just knowing that there's certain very uncomfortable parts of life
yeah,
and that's okay. Um, and just kind of flowing with it and knowing that there's highs and there's lows
yeah,
and I will get through them
yeah.
every single time. And so it's just trust, a whole lot of trust.
Mhm. Yeah, but that's beautiful because that's like an open and soft surrender to just living. Which
Yeah.
is again, that is how we have it all now. It's that we're
Hmm.
not holding on, waiting for something to show up to save us,
Right.
is living in the very, you know, melted reality of what's going on in our
Hmm.
lives right now
Yeah.
and being peaceful and happy with that. provided that there's not some awful circumstances at play. Okay, there's
Right.
one disclaimer. Fine.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So then, as we close, although, man, this conversation, I was going to go back to bed, you guys, because I'm so tired this week, but now I feel like I'm ready to conquer the world. You've pushed my generator button. So, the next 7 hours. But what is there something that's happened in 2025 or going to happen that you're really looking forward to, personal, business wise, anything like exciting, an event?
Um, I think right now, just because I have been in house mode, the exciting thing is that my house is hopefully in the next like week going to actually be a house and not a construction zone.
Mhm.
And for someone who is a Cancer Sun and Cancer Rising, home is everything. It's my
Mhm.
safe place. And I have been living in a construction zone for 4 years.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have a house that I'm going to be able to walk into and not be walking across plastic sheeting or cardboard on the floor or, you know, bookshelves that are just holding all the tools and paint cans,
Mhm.
to have a house that feels like a home is going to open up so much
Mhm.
mental capacity for me
Yeah.
that I feel like all the magic's about to come forth because I've been pouring a lot of energy into this and unable to do it to that. So, as far as what's coming down the line, I don't know, but I expect that it's going to be awesome
Yeah.
what comes out of it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, it's true. It takes up a lot of space. And
Yeah,
that will be a big celebration when it's done
yeah,
because I've seen you blood, sweat, and tears
yes,
weekly
quite literally,
throughout the whole
all of
thing.
those things.
All of those things. Fabulous. Well, a lot of wisdom. I usually am a bit like puppy dog energy, but I tell you, talking to you was very dropped in and still. And so I'm noticing that, like, that was nice. So I just thank you for sharing your heart and your time with us today. That was
Yeah,
a really, really beautiful conversation.
thanks for having me, Mia.
Yeah, you bet.